Hello. Hi, Kieran. So I'm late. Had a little motorbike incident uh, on the way home. I'm very lucky to be here actually. Just nothing too dramatic. It was just someone rear-ended me, which is hilarious because they did it in such a stupid and slow way. But yeah, a bit of a hit and run situation, and luckily nothing worse than that. No real damage. So, but yeah, I had to stop for a bit because it shocked me. So yeah, I'm here now. That's all that matters. Okay, who else we got here? Just you so far, is it? Oh no, we got Jackson. Welcome. Hey, good. Yeah, you. Uh, yeah, it is. But like I said, could have been a lot worse. Yeah. If I wasn't here, it's a different situation. Anyway, all good. So today, over the next 2 weeks, we kind of slow down a bit and just speak about more about audio effects. Now, before we do though, let me open it to the both of you. Answer me truthfully uh, or openly about your usage, your current level of knowledge with effects. Do you feel comfortable with them? Do you feel like basic? Okay. And in terms of basic, what are we using mostly? Yep, yep. Great. That's good. That's good. And yeah, cool. So reverb and echo, pretty familiar with. Yeah, yeah, it is. But I'll explain. Obviously, there's several classifications, but EQ can be used as an effect for sure. Especially when we look at combining what we've been learning with modulation and then combining with EQ, which could be lots of fun. Because, for example, and I'll get into more details later, but EQs and filters are the same. Yeah. So where it becomes interesting is when you treat an EQ as a very powerful um, filter, essentially. So definitely something to look into. Yeah. Kieran, what about you? What's your feeling towards effects? You pretty comfortable, or which ones? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Cool. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I get you. I wonder if you two agree with me with this. Like, there's a lot out there in terms of effects, and it gets a bit overwhelming. And the tricky thing I find is hearing how some people explain certain things, and they go, okay, here's the technical aspects, but sometimes you hear something and you go, "Wow!" It's like how the hell did they do that beyond just standard synthesis movements? Like just hearing this kind of magical stuff out there. There's obviously this world of processing that's just so in depth and explains why some people have extravagant, you know, guitar pedal chains, and why some people have extravagant modular synthesis effects, right? So, hi Jasper. Um, yeah, so there's obviously a kind of a magic thing about effects, but how do we utilize this, right? I find that's the bigger question. Like, obviously, what may help is researching online and seeing how people get specific quirks, but maybe there's a starting point that we can begin with, apply a certain mindset to it, and at least then with that mindset, we can push the sound here and there. The reason why I say that is because just like you, effects was to me reverb delay, right? At the beginning, that's the most obvious effects. Then came in EQ, then came in compression. So we obviously with certain effects we know the gist of what they do, but the crazy thing is even within a reverb plugin, there's a lot of power to it. So obviously there's like some key things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down to certain key elements of each plugin. But before we even do that, we're going to try and at least have a broad understanding and solid foundation of certain effects. So at least we know where to go if we're trying to imagine a sound. So let's just see here the notes. Include sound. Here we go. Sharing screen. So this is the notes for this week and next week, because we're going to split this over 2 weeks here. Now, first off the bat, just realized I'm a bit quiet here, but there we go. First off the bat, you can skip all this, but the main thing we can start with is realizing you can categorize all the effects in music production, music recording, that kind of stuff, sound. You can split them up into 3 main groups. That is mixing focused, creative, and utilities. Okay. Mixing as in your standard EQ, your compression, nowadays AI mixing tools, AI mastering. But yeah, there's certain effects that obviously are more designed to clean up your sound, process your sound, and make it fit a mix. You can use it for mixing, right? Obviously, when you do stage 2, you'll get deep into mixing, and then we'll talk about mixing specific processes. Creative, well, arguably that's all of them. You can use creative effects. You can use effects for creative means anyway, right? But generally speaking, they sound obvious to what they do to the sound. For example, reverb, quite creative effect, puts the sound into space, done, right? But of course, there's already a bit of a crossover between mixing and creative, right? You can use reverbs for just, you know, designing a sound, or you can use reverb in a very specific mix-friendly way, like putting sounds in a certain space, therefore making a difference between foreground, midground, background. If you have me for mixing, obviously I'll tell you more about that. Utilities, well, that's the stuff that aren't very exciting, but they're very important. For example, noise reduction, gain controls, and whatever. Right now, obviously that's a bit too simple if we think about the effects in just 3 groups, right? But it's a good start. What Ableton did up to version 11, not 12, in version 11, by default, your effects were put into groups like this in the browser. That helped people, find things specifically, I suppose, but it helped people kind of understand the effects a bit better as well, right? Now, just before we go into that and how to switch Ableton's browser to this view, because nowadays it doesn't do that, I don't think. unless yours does, but I'll show you how to toggle it on and off anyway. Um, just before we go into this specific stuff, audio effects, the real term for audio effects is signal processing, which makes sense. You take a sound signal, you process it, right? So whenever you see the terms DSP, SP, encoding, signal encoding, we're talking about signal processing. It refers to effects or ways to kind of put sound from one area to another. Yeah, so signal processing is the key term. The thing with most of the effects we use within Ableton and otherwise, hardware as well, there's one basic we do expect to see. And it's not always the case, but it's majority of the case. Dry wet. Someone here present, explain to me what dry wet is, or at least your understanding of dry wet. Yeah, which is exactly correct. So when we have 50% dry, 50% wet, what do we have? Yeah, so you end up getting equal amounts of output signal of the signal with no processing plus the signal with processing. Another way of thinking dry and wet from now on for everyone here is obviously it's referring to a mixing principle as well. But one thing that helps me early on is that for me, dry wet is like perspective. So if it's dry, it's more in the foreground in your face. And if it's fully wet, it's more fully processed, obviously, but it also means that it's kind of more smeared because the signal, the original signal is gone. So in a way, 100% dry or 0% wet is it's complete, the sound's in front of you. When you have 50-50, you have kind of like mid-ground, and you have equal parts effect and equal parts dry signal. And 100% potentially could mean the signal's gone, and then you have just the pure texture process signal. So with just dry wet alone, it's a very powerful way to really grab the attention of your listeners or otherwise, right? So that's why I made a little note here. Generally speaking, you either want a subtle amount of effect or fully process. 10 to 30% versus, I'd say 80% or higher. Now, the reason why I say this because typically your plugins start at 50-50. For me, that equals half-assed, if that makes sense. 50-50, generally speaking, doesn't sound good, if you ask me. And uh, that comes from working with other mixing engineers, working with other producers, but also years of trial and error. And I realized 50-50, 50% dry, 50% wet. The sound doesn't really sound good because I don't know, like it's not foreground or background. It is just in the middle mush, right? And if everything was 50-50, it doesn't sound great, if you ask me. If you start dialing in dry wet more specifically, you can start getting dimension in your mix. And I don't know if you found that out yourself already, maybe I'm preaching to the converted, but something to think about if you haven't. But who's actually noticed that, or who didn't know that? Who's found dry wet to be pretty mysterious? That made sense. Fair, fair, fair. How about Kieran and Jasper? What do you reckon? Dry wet? You knew about that, or now you have an better idea? Yeah, 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 yeah. 100%, 100%. Now, uh, who here everyone present, who here uses effects sends and returns, these return tracks? I know everyone's, yeah, I know everyone's got a default reverb delay, but who's actually goes in and tweaks it and or even adds more? Yeah, nice, nice. No wonder it sounds so clear. Yeah, you used to. Yeah. No, no gain. I'm not going to sit here and tell you don't do that because I do that too. But this is how I see it. When I'm making a track, typically I want to put things in the space. So I have two reverbs here. They're not very clear what they're labeled, but I know what they are. One essentially is a close one. The second one is further out. Uh, Before I had three reverbs. Actually, technically I do have three reverbs, but before I had short, medium, long. But then I thought at the same time, because of the amount of detail I put in my automation stuff, it got a bit messy anyway. But ever since I just refined it to just short and long, it's been amazing because what I have is I can have, say, the drums or another element really close and intimate in a small space. Then I can have stuff in outer space that's kind of just moving around the area. And just having two different reverbs, short and long, it made a big difference in my mixes. I was aware of foreground, background, and all that stuff before, especially knowing dry or wet. But with the short and long, it's even more defined, I find these days. Um, but not only that, it kind of makes sense referring back to the whole dry wet situation, right? If you think about how it works, all effects on the return tracks, they're fully wet, which makes sense. That's how you use returns and auxiliary tracks, return tracks. And basically, you're dialing in the dry signal, if that makes sense. So you're dialing in how much goes into the reverb effect. So essentially, you have a really dry sound and you're kind of dialing in a percentage, which we call parallel processing. That's another way to think about it. So some of you may have researched compression and may have come across a technique called New York parallel or New York drum compression, which refers to using a compressor on a send, or at least something that has a dry wet. Same concept. So uh, essentially, having that more defined dry and wet control is more possible with the send system. Otherwise, Ableton's effects, if we look over here in the effects section, oh, these are just selection effects I like here, either labeled as amount, let me turn on my cursor, either amount or dry wet, of course. But in an ideal situation, we get individual controls of dry signal, 0 to 100, and wet, 0 to 100. So we can really fine tune it. That said, for beginners, that's not as user friendly. So some people accidentally do that via using returns. But it's kind of nice to know in Ableton the effects are just a more simple, you know, 0 to 100% dial. But I'm sure you've seen plugins that have dry and wet separate, right? Which kind of works like return tracks. So that's something to think about. Now, obviously the short and long reverb thing, that I like having that dimension. And do I recommend people doing it? Yes. Do you have to do it? No, right? But there's also another benefit to using certain effects on the return track. So some of you, question to some of you, does anyone use delays that actually use delays on the return tracks? Do you send stuff there? Yeah, I got one. Other two, yeah, maybe. Yeah, done before. What was the difference between doing that versus inserting it on the track? Well, did you notice any differences? Eh, Ooh, interesting. Well, of course, if you go into the return tracks where the effects are, you can change the timing. But you're touching on something that I was hoping um, would come up. So let's get a bit more clarity here. I'll show you a nice little example here. Let's find a guitar. Let's see. Library. Where's everything? Guitar. These samples. Probably I don't really like guitars that much, so I don't think I had too many. But let's see. Instruments, guitar. Cool. So I'll pop that there, and just so everyone can hear me, hear my Ableton. Let's send you the listen to link. Link incoming. Log in. Copy. All right. In the chat is the link to my Ableton. Everyone jump on that now. And I have a little guitar sample. Nice little guitar stab. Now, of course, if we want echo on that, or delay, doesn't matter, we get this 50-50 by default. Pretty nice. We can aim for something more intimate and up in your face, and the effect is more of a more subtle. Get more clarity as a result, as well as something that's more above 80%, which will give you more of that kind of texture of it. So that's cool, right? But let's go a bit nuts with this. Lots of reverb, lots of decay, lots of feedback. Cool. Now, let's just say we're trying to do something specific, like a little throw. Now that's a more modern term for it, but essentially it's just automating the difference between processed and then, dry then processed with the tail. So I'll show you what I mean. So I can have sound completely dry here, no delay here, and then just fang it up here, chuck it out, and I get this situation where it goes dry, whoa, and then out to nothing, right? But to make it sound smooth, I want a bit of a tail at the end here. Drag it downwards. Oop, a bit too soon. Yeah, so there's no kind of happens here. There we go. That's all fine and dandy, but let's do it the alternate way, which is, let's bypass that. Let's use a send. So on my send C, my third one is an echo 2. So I'll send this, shove it up there, cut it like this. Oh, remember I got to start a bit sooner. Around there. And cut it immediately. I mean, I can have the tail, but I'm going to cut it immediately. And I wonder if you can tell the difference. So compare that with this guy, device on, dry, wet. So let's see both curves here. mixer. This one. Boom. Okay. So this one is echo inserted onto the track. So inserts the tone when you put the effect on the track. And this is using the send, right? So let's hear it again. What the difference is. We'll just, can I just bypass this real quick? Yeah, I can. I'll just turn this off. Cool. All right, so this is the insert version. Nice. And this is the, what we call a throw using just the sends, which is, we'll bring this one. Yes, they're different echoes, but what did you notice there, anyone? Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and I can kind of try and emulate that with the insert. Let's see. But the problem is I don't get the same effect. So let's just tell it to die off sooner here and cut down here. Oops, sorry. Let's turn the reverb off because it's covering a fair bit. So with the inserted effect, I control the level of the fade out within the limitations of the plugin. This obviously depends on some other factors, but that's about it. Whereas I can have the most craziest setting on this guy. Right. Type of feedback territory. But I have no problems with clarity, essentially. Let's just take this off a little bit. So I get this a different effect. It's got this interesting difference between clarity and process sound. And in fact, let's just say I put more notes in this guy. Oops. Let's just do this, something simple, nothing fancy. Let's turn this echo off. While we're here, just because I'm an effects nut, just because we're doing echo doesn't mean we can't do any other effect. Ooh, smooth. So I love this because it's like you just punch it in, which is really, it's almost like chucking the fader up on a DJ mixer. And while we're here, just because we're getting into the vibe, let's get my more fun effects. I made this rack called the DP4, which is inspired by a piece of hardware that is ludicrously hard to find these days, but I had the pleasure of using back at my AIM days while I was learning engineering. The DP4, super cooked kind of effect. Ooh. There we go. Let's make it at the end of every little phrase, like so. So what's going on? What's going on is you're actually doing something that the legendary dub reggae artists used to do. So people like scientists, Lee Scratch Perry, King Tubby, who originated this whole situation, all the way from Jamaica in the 70s. Oof. Sound system culture, reggae music, but specifically dub reggae, was when people started treating the mixing console in a way that we do use our DAWs to this day and age. So completely pioneering music genre. And look, dub reggae, it's associated with those echoes like boom, chaka, boom, taka, da, 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 boom, chaka, boom, that kind of rhythm. Yes, how they did it was they got reggae bands to play, and they did these dub versions while they're playing, and then they were just sending stuff on the bloody, on the console. But on the console, what you have is 2 to 3 sends. The more bigger and more richer the dub artists, they would have maybe 4 sends, and they would have typically on those sends is various reverbs at different settings, short, long, maybe long, maybe different types, maybe plate reverb and spring reverb, just get that really springy kind of sound. And then of course a couple of different delays, which they will just send it. And they don't just do that; they also automate, or more specifically, play these settings where they change things like time and whatnot. Let's see if we can dub out this little thing. So I'm going to go to my send and automate stuff on there. Yes, I'm not using the Ableton delay, but you treat it the same way. It's just I have a specific tone I like, so I went for stuff that's a bit dirtier and yuckier than the Ableton pretty delay. So I use this one by Fors, Fors. This one's called Return. If you're on Ableton Suite, any number doesn't matter. If you're on Ableton Suite, you can download this for free, which is excellent. I'm a big fan of Fors. I think he's amazing. He used to work for Electron, and he has amazing. Oh, let me do this so you can see this. Fors.fm is his website. He's a bit of a genius. So if you know kind of situation, and he's made a lot of different plugins. Some of them expensive, some of them free. So Return is a wonderful delay, super yucky. As you can see, a colorful delay with a grimy signal path inspired by vintage effects. It's a bit dirtier. That said, you can do kind of the same thing with Echo, and I think Echo is more powerful anyway, but I like the simplicity and the yuckiness of this one. And also, may I suggest, Fors is also free ROM, which is a beautiful long reverb, which I didn't use a lot, but because I bought his $80 Opal plugin, whatever, that drum machine, this thing, $60 US, so it's probably 80 anyway. It comes with a reverb that's based off ROM called Void, with a bit more controls. So essentially, think of this as a paid upgrade version of ROM, but ROM still sounds luscious and beautiful. So if you want to experiment with that, it's free stuff, worth your time, right? So let's just see what Return can do. We'll just find some parameters to automate. So quite simply, I'll just do some rhythm stuff and just goose it up and down here. And notice how clear the signal is, because we're just using returns. It's just very clear. you feel like if you feel like the effects are getting a bit unruly on the sends, the easiest way to kind of rebalance everything is you just turn your return tracks down. It's pretty easy. So yeah, using return tracks strategically is fantastic. And going back to what I was going to tell you about why using returns is special and why I mentioned dub reggae is because when you send um, anything to return track, there's this feature called post fader, which I love because what post fader means is that no matter how much signal you send, less or a lot to the return track, when you cut it out to zero, for example, it keeps the tail of the audio. So you can always hear that the signal exit. Whereas when you have pre-fader mode, which is an option you can change to for some weird reason, it does the opposite. So if you cut it, the effect will just cut, which kind of works the exact same way as dry wet. If you just went dry, it just cuts, which is fine. But you know, I'm not saying you should always do post fader stuff, but I find personally post fader sounds smoother while retaining clarity, while also allowing you to go a bit cooked with your effects. So go a bit extreme because then you still have the ability to dial things back. So you get this extra precision. And I don't know about you, it sounds great. And I don't know about you, I'd rather do this than automate dry wets and figure out the precise values of when is the signal good. Whereas this, I just go, oh, I'll just send it, just shove it up there and just find a good rhythm or a good passage to chuck it in there. Maybe just before transition, just ramp everything up. That's classic. Or you can do these nice little jams with simple ideas and then kind of bring a sound to life. And mind you, those fancy samplers people talk about with Uber parameter doesn't parameter, mate. Parameter locking and step sequencing. You know, the Roland TRAS, the Electron boxes. They can do this, but this thing where on certain steps, say the fourth note or the 16th note, you can just send an effect, right? I'm doing it right here. I'm literally doing it right here with even more power. This is why this stuff is great. And if you're a nutcase, which power to you if you are, just know that there's a maximum of 10 return tracks. Right? So let's see it. Woohoo! So if you really want them, you can go nuts and put lots of effects on there. I've never found it useful more than 4. To be honest, if you're using that many, you're probably recording a band and using different headphone mixers because that's the other reason you use return tracks. But that's more of a studio thing, like a recording studio thing. For general effects processing, 2 is good, 3 is great, 4 is too much or plenty, I'd say. But yeah, something nice to see and hear. You get this really beautiful balance between clarity and mega processed. It's the benefit of having 0 to 100 dry, 0 to 100 wet, individual to each other. So we're having that here, which means, yeah, we have the control of having clarity and ease of use, if you ask me as well. Now, another thing you might have noticed is this is a thing I do a lot. And I preach this a little bit, to be fair, and I'm not saying that everyone should do it, but I think it just, for my headspace, works so well because I like minimal tracks, lots of automation. In other words, I like stuff sounding clear and just more on the like raw side, if that makes sense. Just it's kind of like that Nirvana idea. They sound so good, but there's only like 4 instruments: drums, bass, guitar, vocals, right? So it's the same kind of concept. You don't need a million elements. You just need a few elements doing a lot. I think that's more powerful, if you ask me. Similar to dub reggae. Dub reggae sounds spacey and atmospheric and super vibey. Really, it's just guitar, drums, sometimes a vocal, sometimes a brass, um, bass, of course, and 5 or 6 tracks, delayed reverb to the nines, right? So it's a similar concept. I don't like having heaps of tracks, but I like to see a lot of automation lanes. So what I do is when I work on a certain automation parameter, when I'm happy with it, I press the plus symbol to drop it down here. So let's just say I want to do another one like a filter. Yeah, so let's record this in. Yeah. Can this move out of the way? Maybe it will hide itself. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm just going to record this. I think I liked this part. Oops. I love how it keeps my feedback, like that sound of the feedback at the certain points I move to, like due to the automation. Whenever you get scared of feedback, just turn the feedback down. It's not that hard. Paste. Let's make it cyclical. So once I finish working on that, I hit plus to bring it down. And if I feel like I don't need to see it anymore, just hit minus. No biggie. I wonder. Let me just do this. Let's make it almost French touch inspired. Nice. Oops. Trippy. Yeah, anyway. So yeah, I like seeing my orchestration. So when I work on something, I hit plus just to drop it down. And if I see this kind of thing, sure, it takes up more room, valuable real estate. But the good thing is I can kind of see an overview of the track. I see almost like an energy level readout of how my track is going. So if things are kind of rising to a point, great. If things are just kind of like repeating too much, maybe I need to give it more space. You know what I mean? So I think this is a useful technique. Who actually does that already? Like, again, just to make sure I'm not preaching to the converter here. Anyone else use this thing? Let's drop it down a lane. You? Okay. Do you think you'll start using that? Yeah, see how you go. Obviously, you make the decision if you like that, especially if you like automating a lot of things. Um, but yeah, I love that because, yeah, as opposed to trying to make like 50 layers to do interesting things, I'd rather have maybe 12 to 14 layers in the track and then the rest just kind of sings. Um, and it obviously this ties in with sound design too, because then you just go back to your samplers and your synths and you go, oh, what else can I do? Maybe I can change start time. Uh-oh, we found something cool. Let's let's just do some well cooked lines here. Oh, hey, yeah, baby. Let's see how that looks. Sounds. Do we dare loop it? Sure, why not? So yeah, you don't need $2,000 groove boxes and samplers to do the same thing. Ableton allows you to do these type of sound designy cool things as well, right? Cool. Anyway, so yeah, use your returns. Use this. I don't even know what that system is called. Let's just see if it gives us a name. Add automation lane. So that's a bit boring. Adds another automation lane for the selected device and controller. Yeah, so you're creating more automation lanes. Eh, I, I suppose we'll go with that. That's what it's called according to the manual, but I think it kind of undersells its value, if you ask me. Anyway, cool. So if we go to the actual browser, not just my stuff, because as you can see, I've kind of collated my favorite effects within Ableton and otherwise. So yeah, I do like Echo a lot. I do like a lot of other Ableton things, even reverb. So I'm not adverse to chucking reverb on a track. Oops. But I normally use that along with sends because typically reverb, when I'm putting reverb on a track, I'm doing like a transition thing. For example, dry wet towards the end, but also at the same time, and this is where we like the multiple lanes view. I can see that I'm drawing something there. Let's see if this works. It should, because that's working in tandem now. Oh, let's make this slow. Let's make it low quality. Oh, maybe no smoothing. Hey. Let's start this sooner. See what I mean? You can see it. Doesn't mean I don't do transitional things with the sends as well, but sometimes you need to do something specific. Just thinking here, I might actually use my sends to send this. See what I mean? Like you kind of get this better sense of the whole thing, and you go, wait, maybe if I do this, this will make more sense towards the end of the phrase, blah, 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 for transitional purposes. What's great is I can move them up and down, like just like regroup them, if that makes sense. So there's my send reverb. This is the reverb on the inserts. So 2 parameters there, plus 1 from the return track. Now the beautiful thing with the return, of course, is the tail. So we love that because it's got this smoothness to it. Ugh. When it comes to production, this might be neurospicy element of me, but there's something about that bit. The end of when the sound's done, but the effect dissipates, it keeps going. Like that's the stuff I want to resample, capture, and turn into textures for atmospheres. It just sounds so vibey. Oh, and just to really emphasize it, let's just push this into universal levels of reverb. Although it's very subtle because I cut a lot of frequencies out. There it is. Ghostly. Anyway, cool. Anyway, that's some workflow things. Let's go into Ableton's effects. So if we didn't have any form of categorizing this, yeah. I don't know why. It's just reverb delay tails. Man, it's the best. So right there with you, Jasmine. So yes. So correct me if I'm wrong. Someone confirm for me. When you go to the audio effects in Ableton Live 12, no matter what version, you see every effect individually. Am I correct? Righto. So what they used to do in Ableton 11 was they had this in categories. So I forgot how to do it, but let me just see here. Maybe they took the option off. No, I'm pretty sure they kept it. Date modified, right click, open. Because there's in 11 there was a way to put it in. What's that? Oh, is it grouped? Good. So it's grouped in just like the notes, like this. Yeah. So there's a way to flick between the two. Oh, someone's giving me the picture. Yeah. That's what I was looking for. Where's that again? Show filter, show file extensions. That doesn't work. Is it this one? No. Because you can go in between. Is it right click this? No. Anyway, it's not that important. If yours is grouped now, then good. If you prefer to explode the view and just see everything individually, then be my guest. But I don't know about you. Whenever you see a folder that has all these tools in it, it's a bit confusing, right? So I'm actually with Ableton on this one. I do like the categories. I do, because it does help you kind of lean your way to a certain direction. But that said, I also disagree with Ableton naturally, because I'm a rebel. So I like to simplify this group even more myself. Requires you to throw things into memory, but it's okay. I think that despite Ableton's groupings, really there's only a handful of different effects types. You got stuff that moves, so modulation, so chorus, tremolo. In Ableton, it's labeled auto pan, although it is an auto panner, but it can be used in a tremolo way. Flanger and phaser, they're your modulation effects. Okay. Technically, shifter goes into there as well. I don't know why I didn't add that. Okay. And then time-based effects, they speak for themselves. Reverb, delay, echo, that's the same thing. Okay. Spectral refers to the spectrum, frequency spectrum. So there's your EQs, filters, and panning is technically a spectral thing. But in a certain setting, you can turn the auto pan tool to a tremolo. Okay. Dynamics, so compression and gating, which is more mixing than creative, although we can use it in a creative capacity. My personal favorite, wave shaping effects, distortion, bit crushing, which is literally the opposite to each other. You got sound being shaped in a way that creates all these new harmonics, which is beautiful, and then sound being destroyed, which also creates harmonics, but different artifacts, a different style of distortion. These days, I even think of it even like I blur the lines even more. So if you're comfortable with this, right, Another way to think of this is it's even more simple. It's either volume or time, right? Because whatever I told you, some of you might notice already, but whatever I told you, distortion, EQ, compression, that's all volume, right? And also reverb, delay, chorus, and echo, phaser, flanger, not shifting, that's slightly different, I suppose, but reverb, delay, chorusing, um, and those type of effects, they were all created from the delay effect. Did you know that? Did anyone you know that already? Possibly not. Yeah, news to you. Yeah. Who's heard of the name Les Paul? Surely, Kieran, you'd know Les Paul. Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. He besides Les Paul obviously having guitar named after him, who knows his actual history? Oh yeah, he's one of the greatest. But arguably, he's more important than being just an amazing guitar player. But who knows what else he's known for? Yeah, that's one of his many things. I'm gonna write in the chat some other things. He invented the Strat? No, no. Heavily inspired the Strat, though, to be fair. So good shout. But I'm going to name some things that you'll be surprised to learn that what Les Paul created. Okay, so Les Paul created in caps multi-tracking, uh, tape delay. Coincidentally, as a result, diffusion, which is the precursor to reverb processing, chorusing, flanging. I spelled chorusing wrong. Chorus. He invented multi-track recording. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Okay, chorusing, flanging, doubling effects. Speaking of the massive one, he also created was overdub. So this is a bit of pub trivia for everyone here. So Les Paul, you look him up yourself, Google it yourself, and look. Before I taught at Abbey Road Studios, I had no clue. I thought Les Paul was a guitar. I thought it was just some old bloke who had a guitar named after him, and yeah, was an amazing player. But what I didn't realize through my research was what we do to this day is heavily thanks to what he created. So, arguably two of the most important things in recordings, multi-tracking and overdubbing. He created that, and how he came up with that was he basically just messed around with a tape machine. But back then, you just record to tape machine. That's it. It was his amazing idea, genius idea of saying, well, what happens if we set up different tape heads? So he started off with an extra tape head, which was used for overdubbing. So that will allow you to record, but then hit this overdub button. You can record over a section, and the rest of the tape will be untouched. So you can replace and keep the rest of the recording intact. Whereas before, if you mess up, you record again. So that's pretty huge. And then with the multiple tape head idea, he built that into multiple divisions. And he said, well, actually, if I record multiple times on a tape, maybe I can layer it up somehow. So he obviously came up with the concept of multi-tracking, having multiple tape heads, multiple tracks to record to. Because before that, if you listen to the music in the 50s, just before the 50s, Essentially, recording was band in the room, singer in the room, everyone in the same room, performing in front of one microphone, recording straight to vinyl, which is ridiculous, right? If you mess up, you start again. Oh, yeah. I mean, he should, but he's criminally underrated. Just like Wendy Carlos was, a name I mentioned in FM Week. She's criminally underrated. Les Paul is criminally underrated. People said the Beatles came up with multi-tracking. No, they didn't. They used what Les Paul did, right? Just as powerful as Maestro creating the first distortions, right? This is pivotal stuff. What's interesting about the delay situation was when he was obviously working with recording techniques, he was like, but hang on, when I added this extra tape head, right, and add another one, if I play a sound through it, there's this repeating sound, this kind of takaka kind of sound. So early tape delay was literally 2 or 3 repeats according to how many tape heads it had. And of course, up came this notion of feedback and diffusion, which means that you create multiple repeats. But back in those days, delay was only takata, takata, just a couple repeats. Even then, that was massive. That's why you heard the early surf rock records, or maybe a bit before that. You hear these kind of repeats, but they're very short. We call them slapback delays. Anyway, so it proves, actually, I haven't mentioned chorusing and flanging. Chorusing and flanging happens when you vary the speed of the second or third tape heads. So that's various speed controls, which obviously at this day and age we recreate with LFO rates. So effects like flanger and phaser and that kind of stuff, that's created from delay. That's why if you pull out a chorus, flanger, phaser effect, majority of those effects have a delay control on them. Does that make sense? Makes sense, right? So that kind of ticks off another kind of demystifying thing about those effects. But anyway, let's get specific. I don't think I need to talk about reverb delay too much because you know how they sound, right? That said, I want to throw out some things. Question: who EQs their reverbs? Thumbs up if you do. Jasper, what did you notice or about EQing reverbs, or why do you EQ your reverbs? Answer one of those questions, or both. Yeah, I like that. Do you notice when you EQ the reverbs, it sounds a bit cleaner too? Yeah. Now, for the other two here, if you didn't know that, this EQing situation within the plugin, I don't mean the filter on the input, that's not as useful, I just kind of leave that alone. There's a high cut by default, but EQing this, I'd say, is essential, right? One of the worst things you can do is leave reverb, massive reverb processing alone in terms of tonal shaping and just leaving it like that without cleaning it up. Notice that this is my default setting. I don't need more than that. So reverb diffusion, the actual smearing part, is only happening above 400 hertz. That's for me. I like this. Also note that I'm cutting above 4K. I'm taking that out. Actually, normally it's down here. I think I just had it up because typically for transitions I want a bit more brightness, but I don't need that much top end as well. So EQ your reverbs for sure, right? And look, sometimes you might need to be specific, just like Jasper said, like maybe you're trying to do reverb on specific parts of the sound. If you're a techno guy, you might want to do techno rumbles. Well, it makes sense to do the rumbles on mainly these frequencies. No need to do the top end, right? Don't make extra mud than you need. Does that make sense? Or even to be more precise, probably Techno Rumble's more about this, right? But yeah, EQ your reverbs, people. Second thing, who uses pre-delay? Sounds like a no. Who uses pre-delay? You usually turn it off. Fair, 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 fair. But Jackson, do you use pre-delay? Pre-delay. No, that's okay. What did you notice? Did you notice anything? Or was it too hard to tell? Yeah, I mean, that's what it says, right? It kind of makes sense. But we don't, it's not really explained well what it does it? Or what the practical thing is. Yeah, somewhat, somewhat. Let me get Kieran's take on it. Do you use pre-delay? Do you adjust the pre-delay on your reverbs, Kieran? Not really? Cool. Yep, yep. Stereo, yeah, I don't really mess with that too much. In fact, if I do mess with it, I normally take it down to mono for drums. I like mono reverbs on drums. Old school, I suppose. And maybe for some transition techniques, I might start mono and push it to stereo towards the end of a transition. Decay, well, we know what decay does. But now you see size. Size is powerful because you're adjusting quite literally the room size. So how the sound dissipates in a room. So if the size is small, it's more springy and more kind of claustrophobic. But when you expand, of course, you expand to quite literally space. So it's pretty powerful stuff. But it does affect how your decay sounds. So size is important. About Ableton, there's 3 modes. So when it's on none, it sounds really grainy and glitchy, which I love. Like that's a mistake, that's an error, but I like that sound. It's got this kind of graininess to it. If you don't want that, just turn smoothing on. Sounds cool as well. But this technique of no smoothing is what certain producers do for transitions because it's got this kind of intensity to it. Also, anyone, before I explain what pre-delay is, anyone can explain to me what density is? Not quite, but this is the thing. This is obviously I'm in the what I like to do is demystify. Anyone else? Anyone else? Because you might be surprised, people. No, no, that's good. Do that with what? Sorry. Yeah, that would make sense because that's how it's labeled, right? And that's how I've looked at it for years too. But then I realized something quite crucial about it. First of all, before I say this, who uses Ableton Reverb? Yeah, thumbs from Jasper. Jasper, do you think it sounds good? Jackson, you use it too? Very? Yeah, I think it's a great reverb. I love it. I don't use any third-party reverbs. I tried Valhalla and all that stuff, and I just think Ableton's reverb, for how light it is on the CPU, it sounds amazing. But you may have heard people saying, Ableton's reverb, right? If your density is not set to high and it's any lower, it means that the quality of the reverb is lower. So, in other words, high means that the reverb's the smoothest it can sound. It's more clear. It's more dense, quite literally. So it's more information. So high means high quality. Sparse means the lowest quality it can be. It would have been good to know. And especially considering that I'm pretty sure everyone's default reverb starts from either low or mid. So I think it's safe to say set up a good starting point with a EQ'd version. Set this to high, right click, save as a default preset. Do you agree? Yeah, I think you do. Why should we run it any lower than the highest quality? It's because Ableton, they mean well. They say, well, some of our users have computers from high school, right? Or computers from 15, 20 years ago. So maybe that's a bit extreme, but possibly, right? So they have to reach a middle ground. So on those computers, the Ableton Reverb kicks up a bit more on the CPU if you switch on high. I like to think because everyone present is passionate about music, wants to make music using Ableton, chances are your computers are average, if not better. So therefore, you can easily run high and have reverbs galore on every track, no problem. Yeah, so do that now, same as the default preset, and be on your merry way. Now, while you're doing that, pre-delay. I find that supremely important because it does seem to make sense what pre-delay is because it adds delay to the signal, but it's not quite the right to think of it like that. Essentially, it's a time difference between you hearing the sound, the original signal that passes the plugin, and the time when the reverb actually kicks in. So this determines when the reverb kicks in. Now, you got to imagine this. This thing goes up to 250 milliseconds, which is quite noticeable. Why do they give you that range at all? In fact, why does Ableton's hybrid reverb offer you not just pre-delay time up to 4 seconds, but even a synced amount to the tempo? This is very unique. You don't see this. You don't see this around a lot. But why do you think that's there? These options of very specific kind of things almost, right? What do you think, people? Take a guess. A little bit, right? Fading it in, right? So yeah, you're getting closer. What this is it's the difference between clarity, if you ask me, right? That's why my pre-delays never start at 0, because if it's at 0, that means the sound's instantly reverbed, return or not, right? It means that what you hear sound reverb starting straight away. I personally was doing that for the longest time. Then I realized, why does my stuff sound so like smeared? Sometimes I like a bit more contrast. I like the note of the sound to come through and then reverb tail, right? Short or long, doesn't matter. Best way to demonstrate this is drums and melody, but let's just do drums. Let's do classic breakbeats. Da 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 da. Amen. It's a pretty hefty amen break right there. So this reverb on my A return track is a short reverb with pre-delay. I'm gonna ruin the settings a bit and just add some more decay. Take off monoing, stereo. And I got an EQ on it. Haha, see? I'll turn it off. Messy, but we got to hear this. We got to hear this in action, yeah. Maybe a bit longer. Now, obviously, it's a long setting, so it's a bit dramatic with this, but my point is, even with this kind of crazy setting, if I add pre-delay on drums, what I'm saying is, hey, can the drum note come through first and then the reverb tail happen after? Does that make sense? So in other words, can I get the clarity of the drum hit and then the reverb tail after? So for example, 10, even 15 milliseconds is plenty. There's a slight difference there. It's very subtle. Actually, even 20 would be good here. Tighter sound, and especially if I fix this up and take the attack off, this envelope setting off. I can even use this. This is unique to hybrid reverb, yeah? I can even set it to sync 16th note. Let's get a less crazy sound. Sounds more defined, if you ask me, right? Yeah, definitely, because it makes sense, because I'm letting that initial hit come through slightly. Now, if I replace this with like a melodic loop that's very plucky, you can imagine the same kind of concept, right? So if we do something like this. Yeah, that'll do. Hey, too fast. Let's go down to 140. Let's just use not a room reverb, but let's just use a long reverb. Let's not use that. Let's use the algorithm. I'll make it obvious. No pre-delay is quite smeared. I can go slightly drier to clean it up. It's an okay thing to do. But for some pre-delay, let's just do a sync. Oh, that's kind of nice. That's very nice. EQing makes a huge difference as well. Get a really dialed in sound. Pre-delay makes a difference. It just keeps that detail of the beginning, doesn't it? And that's the beauty of that, is you can have something ridiculous, you know, huge size, long decay, but I still get that note coming through, as opposed to you get this mush. Yeah, So the dry signal comes through a bit, and then the reverb is heard after, depending on how much pre-delay you set. Now, the biggest thing about this pre-delay is that you can make a case for not caring about this for drums and melody. No, you know, you're probably doing fine without me telling you about this. But for me, especially when it comes to vocals and vocal reverb tuning, it's paramount, right? I used to struggle with making vocals sound polished and nice, and I realized the real secret when it comes to reverb and vocals is you have to use pre-delay, because you want the vocal to be clear and the vocal in the space, but it needs to be tuned properly. So I'll show you what I mean. Do I have anything dry?
Silence, silence,
Beauty. Nice and dry.
silence, silence,
Don't warp, please. Okay.
silence, silence, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey.
This is what we tend to do, right? So we tend to put a nice vibey reverb, but then, yeah, we have to dial it in a bit just to control it. This is already pretty good because of EQ, and I've added some pre-delay, but let's just take these things off.
Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey.
Too much. You can make it a bit drier, but it's still not good.
Silent, silent, silent and grey.
That's already better, isn't it? But if we add some pre-delay, so about 30 odd should be good.
Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey.
You get that sound that's uber polished.
Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent.
So this is a well-tuned, reverb that works well with vocals. I can take it to different styles.
Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey.
It's got that tightness, the clarity, but the vibe as well. So I can add some vintage here just to make it a bit more gritty.
Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent.
If you see damping, that means the damping of high frequency. So if this is on 0, the high frequencies will bounce around a bit more.
Silent, silent, silent and grey.
As that air, but if you want a more warmer sound, you just dampen it. This goes goes along with EQ settings as well. So you can really get this nice warm sound if you add damping, as well as a cutoff in the EQ.
Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent. Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, 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 silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey. Silent, silent, silent and grey.
So I'm just doing some freezing things, which I'll explain later as well. Anyway, it's nice. The pre-delay is very powerful, and basically what I'm saying is, unless you're doing strictly like background atmospheric stuff, I think you should really just always use pre-delay. Start from 10 milliseconds and go up, I'd say. You don't need much but then you get that little clarity. What you're trying to aim for is a little beginning transients of the sound. So either the drum transient, the melodic transient. If the sound is smoother, then you can afford a slightly longer pre-delay. So imagine a pad or something like that. Vocals similar. Vocals you can start from 20 and above, depending on the singing style. Folk singers, they can be quite slow. You get a more smooth sound. Super powerful, right? But there you go. There's some tricks with your reverb. Why am I pulling out hybrid reverb despite me saying Ableton Reverb being nice? It's because hybrid reverb's a newer version of that, and it's even more powerful. It's a two for one. So this part is the key thing. If it's set anywhere between 50 here and then to the left side, you have convolution, which is this stuff. Anything above that, you start focusing on the algorithm. Fun fact, there are generally speaking, there's two types of reverb mechanisms. You either have convolution or algorithmic. Ableton Reverb is pure algorithm. Hybrid, hence the name, is half convolution, half hybrid. It doesn't make sense for Ableton to have two algorithmic reverbs if they're the same, which also makes sense for me to say hybrid reverb's newer. It's got different algorithms which are different to Ableton Reverb by default, including the mysterious shimmer. Yeah, it can shimmer, people. You've probably heard about the Strymon Big Sky or Blue Sky. Some of you guitarists, looking at you, Kieran. Blue Sky, Big Sky, you know about that? Or Eventide, Black Hole, those ones. You know about that one? Eventide for sure. Black Hole by Eventide. Strymon make Big Sky, Blue Sky. Beautiful reverb plugins. Half the reason why people buy them is because it's got this shimmer algorithm. We have it for free. We have it here. What does it sound like?
Silence, silence.
Unwarp that again. That might help.
Silence, silence, silent and gray. Silence, silent.
Shimmer is pitch delay combined with reverb. So you hear a delayed signal at a different pitch. So if I set to 0, we don't hear it. Or anything melodic. Shimmer sounds gorgeous on. Shimmer adds this lovely color. Freeze, you see that on some plugins, but typically Ableton's Reverb does show up on the looper as well. So freezing means that whatever sound is happening through the signal path, so through the effect, it captures it and captures it in a buffer and keeps it like that. So for example, if I catch a little bit there, I can have it completely frozen, as in it doesn't move anymore, it doesn't accept any more input, it just stays on that setting for that duration, creating a drone. So check this out. So I'm going to capture that, so I'm going to go boom. And now I'm going to blend the trial. Freeze button is that, and this is still going. This button adds additional signal to it, so I can add to that frozen thing here. Typically do, and this will just keep going until I push this. So what I typically do is duplicate the track. So I normally have a separate dry track and then a more vibey one. So this is in the second track now. Wrong thing. My bad. I meant to put it on this track. My bad. Cool. And then increase. No, this is kind of like a manual way of doing it. Parallel processing within the track, you can do many ways. You duplicate like this, or you make an audio effect rack. That's the better way to do it, but I'm just making it quite visual for you. So I'm using the frozen signal, frozen reverb tail to create this drone, but then I'm making it rhythmic, repurposing it using a filter. So now this. Repurposing your sounds. Oh no, it's gone. Take the freeze off, you're done again. Freeze is a great live performance tool. Create these wonderful movements and you can just map it to MIDI, punch it in, punch it out. Great for transitions, great for textures. Anyway, questions? Questions so far? Throw them at me. We kind of defaulted to reverb stuff for a second then, but I can literally spend ages on just a couple of these tools, but I don't want to. I want to move on. But do we have any questions? It's good, eh? Ableton is a gold mine. It's very powerful, and that's why if my favorite effects is there's not a single third-party plugin. I know technically there's some Max for Live stuff here. There's 4 Max for Live tools, but look at this, is all Ableton, right? As good as Hybrid Reverb is, I use it more on Ascend. I like it a lot, but I like the immediacy of Ableton's Reverb for just track stuff. So it doesn't mean I don't go here and choose Hybrid Reverb, because there's some very specific things. The other algorithms are amazing, like Shimmer speaks for itself. Dark Hole is very smooth, I love it. Quartz is weird, it's very metallic, I love it. Tides is even weirder, it's rhythmic, it's like pulsating reverb, I love it. And Prism is even more cooked, it's like very digital sounding, but a nice yucky digital. It works really well on drums, I'll show you. Break beats. Actually, no, let's do something different. Let's just use some percussions. There we go. Oh no, we want breakbeats. It's more interesting. Reverb-wise, it'll sound more interesting. Ooh. Yeah, that'll sound great. Loop that, solo. Hybrid reverb going on. Is all hell, I love it. Yeah, Prism, Quartz. Super in depth. So yeah, they're the algorithmic types. So what's convolution then? Convolution is where you record sound in space, so in a room or for a device, you know, your bathroom or something, you record a sound in space, in that space. You record that response, and that is then saved into as a thing called an impulse response. And an impulse response includes information of time delays, room size, EQ characteristics of that sound in that space. So you can freely share these convolution impulse responses online. You can find them online for free. You can buy them as well. These type of sounds. Little ticks and that kind of stuff. And the convolution plugin, and Ableton's got Convolution Reverb Pro. Just got to make sure you download it, install it. If you have Suite, it's free, but you got to install it. When you have that, you have the sound of that space. You may have noticed that I use this one for my short reverb because A, it sounds good. B, BM7 refers to a $7,000 reverb machine, reverb effect machine you can buy. My friend's got one. It sounds immense. It's fantastic. But I don't have $7,000. Right? So that's I'd take the impulse response, please, for free. Do you usually work with loops or single shots with different variety? Oh yeah, all sorts. Whatever it takes. Typically, if I use a loop, I chop it up like crazy. If I use one shots, then I really go to town on simpler and really make sure the velocities and just make it as dynamic as possible. Just put as much work into it as possible. Yeah, but yeah. BM7, you got a few BM7 algorithms, which is great. Some other hardware ones too, which is cool. There's some nice platey things. This is another super expensive reverb you get for free. Fun fact, I've downloaded all sorts of things, all sorts of impulse responses. You can find, for example, for free, someone on Bandcamp making the PlayStation 1 reverb algorithms impulse responses. So if you want the reverb tails of and the sound characteristics of Sony PlayStation 1, you can find them for free on Bandcamp. Yeah, I used to have that. I used to have specific gear. But look, pros and cons and everything, right? As cool as this is, there's one limiting factor you got to keep in mind. Even though it's a reverb, it is based on the impulse response. And that impulse response only captures time, EQ, whatever it is, in one single recording, one instance. And you think about how reverb works, when I talk in my room or I play drums in a studio or play a synth for speakers in a stadium, hasn't happened yet, don't want to do that, sounds a bit nerve-wracking. But let's just say I did all that. What happens? Every note is different. Every sound is different. So capturing a single response is not great. It's nice. You get certain characteristics that are unique to that space, sure. And that's been proven if you choose things like spring reverbs. You know, nothing sounds like a spring reverb. That sounds cool. And that's a great way to get an authentic spring reverb, but it's not it. There's more to it. Like, springs move. So as cool as that is, it's a bit one-dimensional for me. So I do like it. I don't use it a lot. I like the concept of it. Convolution was a great thing when it came out a while ago now. You may have heard of a reverb plugin called Altiverb. It's convolution. People used to like jerk off all over it as because it's some amazing thing, but it's only because someone went to some church and recorded a sound in space there. I didn't care. Like, that's convolution is great, but not anymore. Where things are moving towards this day and age, which we're hoping to see applied to more like reverb machines and stuff like that, is something that some of you guitarists probably heard of. First of all, the concept of machine learning, and you may have heard of something called neural amp modeling. So using neural networks, so machine learning networks to learn about the behaviors of machine in not just a single snapshot, but overall how sound behaves through that device. So neural modeling for amps is a thing now. So they model the amp's behavior. So this is the next step from impulse response. So literally for the next couple of years, you're going to see people developing machine models of springs and stuff like that more authentically, not just a single capture, but the behavior of the actual machine. It's mad. Using 2 IRAs on my mic preset to make my mic. Yeah, which is great, but again, like I said, impulse response, it's limited. You get close, you get the sound as it was in that moment, but sound is more complex than that. It's a start where companies will be looking, or should be looking in the near future, Jasper, is neural learning, machine learning. So therefore they actually make a more realistic capture of what the TLM would sound like. Yeah, because otherwise it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same, is it? Anyway, geez, we're running out of time and I only just talked about bloody reverb. Jesus. Okay. There you go, convolution versus algorithm. I love algorithm more. Until machine learning neural stuff comes in to replace convolution, I'm not convinced. This is nice, it's just whatever. That said, there's an interesting quirk about convolutions. Impulse responses are in wave format. So who said you couldn't use loops as convolutions? So I'm getting the loop inside the convolution. Now I've got a breakbeat, which doesn't help because the breakbeat's the same. What happens if I apply this space and movement and character to a drum sound, to a bass sound? Could be a bit mind-boggling, huh? Let's just see. It's got some bass. I don't like keeping bass loops, but I might have some. No, I'll make one myself. Fine. Let's go simpler. Chuck this on there. So remember, I put that breakbeat into the convolution reverb. You can do this in hybrid reverb as well. I'm going to turn it off for now. Serum. User bass. Bit too much. That's right. Let's turn the reverb off that. Good. Does that even make sense to you? It's as if I'm sending the bass through a drum loop. That's turned into a reverb algorithm. Super weird. But why would you want to do that? Well, this is where this kind of stuff comes in. Textures. This is a secret sauce right here. It's a lot of low end build up, but it's fascinating. Where's my found sounds? It's actually better if it's well, AI remains to be seen whether it'll really add to our game as opposed to helping us with our game. Machine learning, I think, is the real magic. From there, I think more interface design. So seeing how Korg Gadget, so Korg, they've already added their gadget to VR, and Gadget is an amazing simple DAW with devices, with synths and drum machines, and now you can play it with VR. It's pretty fascinating. I feel like if DAWs really move into that space where you can get all Minority Report and touch your DAW and do all Iron Man things and go, Jarvis, let's make a beat. It could be quite fun to see those type of more closer connections between brain and sound output. And what I'm really hoping for, and this helped me out a lot, and I'll probably be dead by this time happens, but if I can think a song, it comes out from the computer. That'll be cool. But really the answer is I don't know. But I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm going to do what I can in the moment. Isn't that cool? Running a sound for a shotgun shell recording. Could be cool for pads as well. Anyway, I don't need to spend too much time on this. This is quirky. I'll get this kind of shotgun aesthetic. Yeah, I really do hope so, Jasper. Like Neuralink, yeah, I really hope so, because it'll save a lot of time. Shotgun shell sounds alright as a reverb, doesn't it? Cows. Do I have any animals? Yeah. Birds. Yeah, it's gonna work. Okay, fine. Yeah, this is a secret sauce stuff. It's not for everyone, but it's freaking cool. Anyway, you find that. You use convolution reverb, chuck some audio files, see what happens, right? See if that works out for you. Record yourself saying something silly on the microphone and add subliminal messages that way. Get all affects about it. It's fascinating. That build-up is hilarious. That 7-second long seagull recording. It's kind of like that long tail now. Exactly is it doing? It's the weird thing. It's like it's incorrectly using convolution where you're meant to record like a click or sine sweep in the space, which captures the essence of the room. You're putting in a full audio file. You're getting this audio file turned into a reverb model, and it's not right to use an audio file like this because it's got too much information. But that information gets printed on the sound you're working on, and it's kind of cool. It's almost like layering 2, but you're getting like this as a reverb model. So what the algorithm machine is doing is it's still turning it into reverb tails and EQ and stuff like that, the tonality of the sound. So the seagulls are in there, but it's kind of not, because it's a reverb model that sounds like seagulls now. It's very weird. I love it. Explosion. Not in this case. This is pure convolution. No neural stuff. Just using audio. So that's a nice way to spice things up. That reminds me I need to get back into that because I recorded some of these sounds for that reason. Anyway. So we're out of time, people. So in the past, when I was talking about effects, I only spent 1 week talking about. I hope you understand why we got to split it into 2 weeks. We might even have to do 3, but I don't think we go too nuts on it. But it's just so much to find to know when it comes to all effects. But what I'm going to do next week, we'll we'll leave reverb, we'll go straight into the modulation, and then straight into wave shaping. I think they're the more powerful stuff. Compression is not important for sound design. It's important for mixing for sure. Sound design, besides sidechain pumping, there's nothing else that dramatic about it. There's some psychoacoustic things you can create with that. Gate's a bit more interesting. It's the opposite. You're expanding dynamic range. That's a bit more spicy. But yeah, I think we'll crush through modulation effects. So chorus, phaser, flanger, even though we touched on it today, but some tricks on how to use them well, how to go psychedelic about it. Wave shaping, that's the fun one. It's very obvious, but how do we harness it? Yeah. And of course, some talk about filters as well. But I don't know. It's interesting because we talked about how reverb delay is pretty comfortable to use, but I'm sure I've given you some new ideas on how to even spice that up. So I want you to think about that, apply it to your own music, and more importantly, apply it to, more importantly, apply it to your music. But of significant importance to me, apply it to your sounds, your sample packs. So this is the week I'd want everyone who hasn't already sending me 2 sounds for feedback. Yeah. So if you haven't done that yet, just send it to me. Just 2 sounds. Don't be too picky about it, because it's week 12. You've got 2 more weeks till the assessment's due. Okay. And look, life is a thing. So if you think that you need more time, you don't ask me. You reach out to Michael Rohanek. I'll put his email in the chat, and you ask him for extension permission. Okay. He's the only one that can grant it. And let's see if I type it in correctly. Yep. More importantly, the rule is the cutoff time is 2 weeks before the assessment due date. So essentially, by this Sunday, if you feel like I'm going to need an extra 2 days, 4 days, an extra week, whatever it is, you reach out to him. Okay. Email him. Hey, can I get an extension? This is the reason why. Because life. Don't say that, but give good reasons. Of course, you've been sick, you've been away, you've been out of the country, whatever. Send that in an email. Okay. Clear? We're good? Thumbs up. All right, peeps. I'll leave you to it. No worries. Enjoy the rest of your week, eh? Bye.